This episode is for Friday, August 19th, 2016. Welcome, Crater fans. I'm your host, Josh Owens, along with my co-host,
Abby Iyer.
Hey, Abby. How's it going?
Good, man. It's good. Things have been really busy for me, but can't complain, man. What about you?
Nice. Yeah. Feels good to, be home and be podcasting. The kids are back in school. I feel like I'm getting settled back into a regular schedule now. A little chaotic over the summer.
Nice.
Yes. So it's exciting.
Kids are back in school now, right?
Huh?
Kids are back in school now?
Yeah, they went back this week. So they started Monday, which is way earlier than I remember school starting when I was a kid. We always went the last week in August, usually, not the middle.
Yeah.
But I'll
At
take
least you're out of your hair.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have any, but, if you did.
Nice. So this week we are going to be talking about, I'm going to keep talking slowly while I look up the list, building real-time React applications with Redux and Meteor, GraphQL, and the amazing Apollo client. I love that title. Meteor 141 is out, and React binding patterns, 5 approaches to handling this. That's a clever title.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The interesting thing, too, I've been working on getting the new version of Crater up and running. And so there are a number of people that have been beta testing it, including Avi.
Looks amazing, man.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
Stupid fast.
Stupid fast, and it's better than the Meteor forums. So.
Yeah. Yeah, my hope is, I feel like maybe a little bit of commenting has died off just because, navigating to the post and leaving a comment was a very slow process. And with the new version, it's, silly fast. And plus, the other nice benefit is we'll be able to ditch the pre-render servers and just use Meteor at this point because it's all server-side rendered. And then, all of it has been major heavy lifting from Sasha. And, I've just been kind of tweaking and deploying an updated version. So.
Yeah, it's a good showcase for what you can do after the Blaze era. So, a lot of, before Crater was done in Blaze, and so was all Telescope apps.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have this opportunity to use newer technology. So it's a good example of what you can do with the current, tools out there.
And it's worth noting too, the backend has stayed relatively the same. There's been some small tweaks, and I actually have both versions deployed now, the Blaze version and the React version, and the React version is significantly faster, and it's not because the backend has been sped up or anything. It's because it's built in React, which has been kind of an interesting thing to watch happen.
Yeah.
Kind of excited about that. And I also launched the site for Space Camp 2.0. So if anyone is interested in coming to that, we still have some tickets left. I know I launched to a lot of the previous attendees, and we sold quite a few tickets there, but we have a few left, and it's going to be in Corolla, North Carolina this year. And we've got a mansion right near the beach, which is going to be amazing. So check it out, camp.spacedojo.com. You can find out more info.
Yeah, it's also during my birthday, so.
Is it really?
Yeah,
nice.
That weekend.
Are you
3 days. Well, yeah, dude, I'm going to come.
Nice.
But I will say this, whenever I go to these Meteor things, I only go to the events for a little bit, and then I go do my own thing. This will be the same.
Yeah, well, it's not really Meteor specific either, so
tech.
Yeah. The nice thing is the other things all occur at the same venue, right? And you sleep there, you hang out there, you play games, drink beer. It was a lot of fun last year. And I think
I'm really stoked for this year.
maybe we can get Ben to come down too, because I think it's his birthday as well. So that would be fun.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I think this was posted like maybe 2 weeks ago, but we didn't get a podcast out. But I really, really enjoyed this story about building like a real-time React app with Redux and Meteor, because it's along the same lines of a story we got from, I think, Julian before, and he was talking about using Asteroid and doing like DDP on the front end and just going and building an app. And I don't know, it didn't feel quite right to me. But then like I was reading this article and it was like, it just smacked me in the face that this felt like a much better way to implement like a Meteor and React application using Asteroid and Redux. And so basically, like the article walks you through it, but he's taking the DDP messages that are coming in or being removed and like processing it all through Redux, and it's all just one big Redux source. So you're like ditching mini Mongo on the front end, you're ditching, the actual like Meteor DDP client, and instead just using the Asteroid DDP client, and your front end is completely separate from your back end, but they still have that communication channel and they can talk back and forth.
Yeah. I think what people don't realize is DDP is actually really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like DDP is like one of the things that I wish Meteor actually focused on a little bit more, because there's no other client out there that will give you this seamless of integration.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like maybe a misstep that MDG made a while back was not getting more behind DDP and trying to push it as a standard. Like maybe it's not the smartest standard, right? Like we look at the GraphQL standard and that looks pretty interesting and significantly shakes things up and improves things. Maybe DDP wasn't a significant improvement. Maybe GraphQL hit it more on the nose, and that's why we're seeing that being more interesting. We're seeing Meteor shift to that. But at the same time, there's not a ton of specifications for real time. Like we've got Phoenix channels and we've got Action Cable and Rails, and you got a couple other kind of competing standards, but like no one's really nailed it like they did in Meteor. And I almost feel like what they should have done is just hired a couple of developers from other languages to develop DDP clients and put them out there and like try to get those communities to latch onto them as well. And that would have become pretty interesting. I don't know. I think that's what GraphQL will be, but
yeah. I mean, in terms of Apollo, GraphQL subscriptions are being worked on by Amanda right now. So you should, which is getting ready for 1.5, Meteor 1.5. So there'll be GraphQL subs. But I don't believe they're speaking over DDP or anything like that. But probably some WebSocket. Interesting enough. So I've complained about this before, but like Meteor build times are crazy, right? Especially, the 1.4.2 or something, they're going to fix it, the next version. But I hear that every
work on it. I don't know if
they're going to work on it. Yeah, I hear it every version. But what happened with us is like we're at the stage now where we have 9 megs of JavaScript being served to our clients, and it's like kind of like hit us in the face. We did like a page, page speed performance and all that stuff. It's terrible. Google AdWords is screwing us over because of the page load times, and it finally hit us because once you start making revenue and you have all these search engine marketing channels that are being affected directly by page load, everything just starts making more sense, right? I feel like our engineering manager previously kind of like did not want us to focus on things like that and rather just build features. But now we're at a point where we're making good money and we need to figure out this so we can make more money, right? And we had to build the sales dashboard, which most of the time, I think most people will like err on the side of like, oh yeah, let's build an admin dashboard in the app, right?
Yeah.
But this admin dashboard is like pretty crazy. And we could have done like a microservice or we could have done something else, but we are trying to ship something super quickly, So what we did is we booted up the Asteroid client. We have a Webpack builded app that is just serving an index.html file, bundles all the JavaScript, whatever, and we're putting that on S3. And now we have a fully functional admin site that is just HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and it's connected to Asteroid, and reuses all of our APIs that we have on the DDP client. And we use Redux as well on that too. So I think that if you're struggling of building separate sites and all that, I think Asteroid is super good. It's actually really well built. It relies on a lot of the node-like practices, like event emitters and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I use it, and it's going to be used in production. So
Nice.
I think that's going to be it's a good alternative. Also, you could possibly, if you're worried, if you have a big Meteor app right now, this is like the perfect way to get off of Meteor. If you don't want to be on Meteor anymore, you start moving all your front end out of Meteor and then connect over these the Asteroid client. And then eventually you can start moving your backend APIs into microservices.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually what you're ended up with is no Meteor at all, because your front end is gone and then your backend is slowly gone. So if you're trying to make that move, which slowly WorkPop is going to transition into a bigger infrastructure, this is the first way to get there.
Yeah. I think I was talking to Sasha about this, while we were working on the new version of Crater, and he was trying to get, I tried twice to get Webpack and Meteor talking to each other, and there's actually a package for it, and I could not get it to work for either of the apps I was trying. Yeah. These were not Telescope apps; these were client apps, and build times were, I feel becoming a significant problem. I was pairing with people, and remotely, you hit save, and you're like, wait, and then finally it comes back, and reloads the page, and it feels like there's that mismatch where your mind starts to wander if it's too slow, you lose focus on the task at hand, and you're like, oh, let's open up Reddit, let's open up Hacker News, and that's terrible for productivity.
Yeah, so, especially if you're managing a team, just to touch on that, if you're managing a team, not everyone is going to be 100% contributor, right? There's always going to be people on the team that are easily distracted or whatever. And the build time gives everyone an excuse, But, it's really, it's what I've been seeing in my daily life. It's oh, well, I was waiting for the build tool, so, I didn't get this done or something,
Yep,
so.
Exactly. Yeah, so I guess Sasha tried to do Webpack as well, especially on the Crater branch, and he posted a video about it. I think it's on his YouTube channel. But he found it hard, and then we started talking about code splitting, and he's like, code splitting just looks difficult. And so there's definitely this dichotomy between Meteor being easy to get started and Webpack kind of being this power tool, but it takes a lot of configuration, Yeah. And so the stuff that you're talking about and the pain that you're feeling is it's definitely real, and it's definitely something that has to be solved, but it's not necessarily a problem that everybody has right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I just don't know if we'll ever see an easy to use tool that'll do things like code splitting, and make it super easy on the user to integrate in a smart way. And it's not always best practice. For a while there, so I'll say the new Crater site's at 4.4 megs of JavaScript. It's not tiny. And I have a feeling I just added all the OAuth stuff, and I have a feeling it probably got bigger. So, but it's just, it's one of those things, it used to be better to load one giant tarball of JavaScript through one request, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Once you start approaching 4 or 5 megs, it's actually probably better to split it up into what the page needs to render,
Exactly, and these things start to matter more when you have users that care, right? Sometimes your users will put up with 5 megs download time, and that'll be good until a bunch of your users don't, So.
Well, I mean, speed always matters, right? You said, Google dings you. I absolutely think we've been losing Google search traffic because it's been getting slower and slower, and we've been having problems with pre-render and that kind of thing. And so, moving to this faster version with, server-side rendering, should be a significant boost. And I bet Google will reward us for that. And like,
Yeah.
these are known things, right? Like you can read a post by Amazon where they talk about like 100 milliseconds is the loss of millions of dollars for them in rendering time. So like, it may not seem like it adds up at first, but it like over time it will build up and probably like cost you some users of your application if you're not careful.
Yeah. I wish the only thing I would have done differently is worry about that speed before. You know, like when my app was at 4 megs instead of 9, I should have worried about it then. Now we're worrying about it when it's, you know, it's not too late because we still got people and we're still alive and everything. But man, if I were to do it again, I would have worried about this problem a lot earlier. I would have probably done things like Asteroid a lot earlier too. You know.
I mean, it's hard. Like in hindsight, yeah, you would probably pay that technical debt sooner, but at the same time, like it's hard when you're still trying to find product market fit a lot of the time. So
yeah, totally. All right. Well, the next topic of today is GraphQL and the amazing Apollo client. I didn't put the amazing in there; the author did.
Yeah.
This is a really good post. A lot of people have been wondering, like, how do I get started with GraphQL and Meteor and Apollo and all these different things? This specific one is not really Meteor related, but like, how do I get started with, a view layer and Apollo? And there hasn't been many tutorials out. I'll be honest, the Apollo documentation is, pretty crappy right now, just because that's not the focus. That's not the focus yet. And so this guy, forget his name. Let me see 1 second. G Sands, which I don't know his actual name. Let's see.
I think it's like Gerard, I want to say. I followed him on Twitter after I saw this.
G Sands. Gerard Sands.
Yeah.
And he's actually Angular 2 dev, which is cool because, the Angular 2 Apollo client is actually getting very mature, thanks to Camilla. Anyway, back to the story. So he goes through what GraphQL is, why there are benefits, and for people who are new to the show or new to GraphQL, GraphQL is a application query language that effectively replaces REST APIs, and it allows you to have a uniform syntax for fetching data and mutating data on any client, whether that be mobile, web, or Windows Phone. Just kidding. So that's pretty much what GraphQL does. Apollo client is trying to solve the problem of how do I get started with GraphQL by giving you pretty much a standard GraphQL client library that integrates with React Native, React, Angular 2, and that's it for right now. Just recently, the React integration was rewritten. The APIs are rewritten to be more flexible for other view layers to come in, and now there's a bunch of changes which are really, really awesome. There's caching by default. There's server-side rendering. There's just amazing things going on with the React Apollo. Angular Apollo is the same way. APIs are changing. So these projects are in flux, but this post goes through how to build a to-do application in Angular and React. So, pick your flavor and you can start learning Apollo. WorkPop is starting to architect our GraphQL solution. We are going to go with Apollo clients on the client, obviously React Apollo. And the server, on the other hand, we're thinking if we're going to use Apollo server or not. Just because we have a bunch of smart guys and they want more control over, what the structure is going to be. But if just to take that step back, Apollo server is not necessarily it's just an implementation of Express, GraphQL Express. It also has integrations with Happy and Koa and those type of server side libraries. So it's just a set of tools. So if anyone can build their own GraphQL server, but this is a Node.js version. So that's the whole GraphQL thing. This is a great post if you want to get into it. And I think now that people are seriously trying to think about how they're going to put it into production, I think it's probably a good time for people to get involved and get interested in the project. we have GraphQL running in a workpop on our our internal dashboard. We integrated with Elasticsearch, so you can search users in our app, like for people who need to like moderate and like user management for our people who are in sales and stuff. They can we indexed everyone into Elasticsearch, but the Elasticsearch API is different than the Mongo users API, right? So what we did is we unified that via the Apollo client. So building that UI was super easy because we didn't have to worry about different syntactical sugar of Elasticsearch, which Elasticsearch is super weird if you never worked with it, in terms of like how the the results come back. And one thing I will say about Elasticsearch and GraphQL and Meteor at the same time is Meteor has this problem of publishing like counts, right? Like everyone has like this concept of like wanting to know the total amount of documents and that count. So like currently you have to do a bunch of like observes to understand like how many documents are in a certain query. The good thing about Elasticsearch and GraphQL is you just depend on Elasticsearch for publishing those counts. So there's not like this live query cost of constantly watching counts, So as you make the GraphQL query to Elasticsearch, it'll give you the results from that query, and it'll give you the total amount of search results. So you can use that to power pagination or whatever. So other data sources become a huge thing with GraphQL, and especially if you're coming from a Meteor world, you never had access to these data sources and the leverage that they have, but now you do. So that's it. Get into it.
Nice. That's awesome. Because I was just thinking about, I've got a client project that I think could benefit from Elasticsearch, and I haven't started on it yet, so I may give GraphQL a try.
Yeah, it just makes. See, the thing is, what we realize at Workpop with the server guys is GraphQL doesn't make their life easier. It only makes the people building like UI and product stuff, like mobile apps, easier. They still have to do the same amount of work on the back end. It's not like this easier amount of work, but there's going to be less. Like, here's the problem with REST, right? The problem with REST APIs is the way you write a REST API could be completely different than the way I write one.
Yeah, like I've always had trouble. Like Twitter never does the right thing for their REST API, and like getting the data you need out of the Twitter API is always frustrating. So like I totally get that, because you want to be able to just say like, here's your user ID, here's all the data I need, give it back to me. And like you can't do that. You gotta like make 5 different calls to get all the data you want, and that's kind of terrible. So
also
I definitely see the benefit in GraphQL. And I think, for people who haven't heard of it, like to put it into Meteor terms, it's like GraphQL server is going to be like the publication side, right? Like you're going to write your resolvers, and they're going to be like your Meteor publications. And then the React or Apollo client or the Angular Apollo client, like those are your mini Mongo essentially. And they're going to like get that data in and then let you do things with it, and then whenever it updates, like it should rerun that code on the front end and do the right thing.
Exactly. One last thing about REST APIs versus Meteor versus Apollo. Meteor is good because you have simple schema, right? And you can always validate your request with check, or you can use match, or you can use simple schema itself.
Yeah.
Apollo has a type system, or GraphQL has a type system, so you can validate the certain queries or mutations you're doing. But REST has no validation system, right? So everyone rolls their own. Like every REST API has their own validation. So this is another reason to stay away from REST APIs, because you're constantly going to you're inconsistent. You're going to be rolling stuff yourself, and you're probably going to leave Easter eggs in your JSON blob that say have no point of like being there. So anyway, that's another point. But, yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, so Meteor 141 came out like yesterday. Like this is hot off the presses.
Yeah.
I actually was not expecting this. I wasn't paying attention to the Git repo. I've been like heads down working on other stuff, but like this kind of hit me out of nowhere. And so they've done some improvement. I actually haven't even put it into the app that I'm working on right now to see what kind of timing improvement there is, but. they've replaced tar. So before, they were using a JavaScript implementation of tar.
Mm-hmm.
And like I read the deeper article. So if you go like in the show notes, we'll have a link to the announcement. But in the announcement, Ben Newman in a couple of spots says, "Hey, if you want to read deeper, go here." Like I read some of those links, and so like he went from like 30 plus seconds to like 4 seconds by using native machine tar versus a JavaScript implementation of tar. And so basically, when they download a package from the package server, then they would have to extract that, and it was that extraction process that was taking quite a while. And so he's saying that's like 30 seconds down to 4 is almost an order of magnitude there. Like we're close to an order of magnitude. So like I'm pretty excited for this myself. The other thing that they did is they switched to 4.5.0, which is funny because I think the state of deployment in Meteor 1.4 is actually pretty terrible. That was one of the things that helped me out the most with Crater. I literally lost a day to trying to deploy Crater using MUP and Meteor 1.4, and like it's terrible. Like we gave up. We moved it back to 1.3 and just deployed that way. So no node 4.4.7. But so it's like I have a feeling since MUP hasn't even caught up with a working Docker image, I worry like what's it going to look like when it's got to be Meteor or Node 4.5 now. But the good news is like this is the brand new LTS long-term supported version of Node, so hopefully that'll stick around for a while, and it won't be quite as painful down the road. But it's really cool to see like how quickly they were able to make that switch to Node. The other thing, and this is part of it, is that there's no more publish for arc. And so if you ever published a package that had a binary dependency from Node, then you would know that you had to do this publish for arc, which would basically go out and make a build, a binary build. So when you download a package, Meteor would look at the system you were on, and it would download the correct pre-built binaries for you, which was nice. But at the same time, now that they're switching Node versions a lot, that's going to be a lot more painful on package maintainers. So he outlines this, basically for each version of Node that they deploy, you're going to have to relaunch and re-release your packages. And so instead, what makes sense now, and I thought this was coming as part of 1.4, you actually just download everything you need, and then you compile it on the target machine, which I think is the right thing to do.
That's the right thing to do.
But at the same time, like I have a feeling the forums and Stack Overflow are going to fill up with like noobs saying, "I can't do this," because like they don't have the compiler toolchain installed, and like that's cool if you can't figure that out. But at the same time, like what used to be part of a user-friendly process no longer will be.
The more and more I realize like what user-friendly really means. Well, this might be a generalization, but the more experience I get and the more my product is scaling, I realize that user-friendly has a lot of holes in it. There's a lot of holes for user-friendly stuff. I see it seems like the best tools are not user-friendly.
Right. So I'll say like they're more like the more powerful a tool is, the more configurable a tool is, the less user-friendly it's going to be. Like you can try to set defaults, but at the same time, like it becomes hard because like it's hard to document, it's hard to understand all the options that you have, and it's I don't know. Like I'm at this place. I actually started writing an article that was like framework versus libraries and which one's better. And I think I, at this point, err on the side of libraries because I think they can build smaller, more focused teams that can put out something of higher quality versus what a big team can put out. And this you complain about the build time. This is a inappropriate thing to talk about. Is like they say Meteor 142 will focus on fixing the build times, but at the same time, at what expense is that coming? Because we're not like we only have Ben now, and most people don't realize it's only Ben. And so most people didn't, like when I commented, there was a thread on Crater about improving the build times, and I made a comment there that it's only been working on Meteor now. And people are like, are you serious? Like that, to me, that seems like the project's dead, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, just look. All you have to do is click through and look at the developer branch of Meteor, and it's just the solid wall of Ben's avatar for all the commits. There were like 2 or 3 commits in the first page from Tom Coleman. And I think he's like part-time, Zoll's part-time on Meteor. Like everyone else is on a pod. And that's fine. But you have to understand that like either the community has to take up the cause here, or we're just going to get slower releases. And, I don't know, like these are not easy problems either. If you go and look up the link on Crater about improving build time, the ticket talks about, there's a link to the like how to, basically Meteor has a profiling tool to check out the speed for the builds, and like they know roughly where you could probably make gains, but some things still aren't instrumented there, so they don't know what's taking a long time, and like Meteor 1.4 seemed to increase CSS precompiler time dramatically. So I know that's one thing they're looking at for 1.4.2. But like people can pitch in and help. So I would advise you to do the research and go find these and try to pitch in and help. Like that's if Meteor's your jam, then it's on you to make it better.
Yep, I posted on there too. My profile. It was alright. Pretty slow, but I will say we found out that 25% of our build time is with tap I18N. So if you guys have, I think compilers, if you're using a package that is using the 1.2 in previous compilers, which tap I18N is, you might be screwed. So it's not just about helping Meteor out; it's helping these packages that a lot of people use that have been upgraded to 1.3 or 1.4, because 1.3 had a huge gains in the compiler plugins, but a lot of people haven't done that. And I understand why, because it's it's pretty touchy. You don't want to break everybody's in.
It's hard too. Like as a guy that previously wrote packages, like I stopped doing it because it was just hard to keep up with the changes. And like I remember we had probably like 15 packages out for differential, and when they went from 0.7 to 0.8, that's when they switched to Blaze. Like that was a terrible week. Like I feel like I spent the entire week just updating packages and making it Blaze, which is part of the game, I guess. But like it wasn't a great experience. And so I think, and then like on top of that, you got to find all the hidden documentation everywhere that kind of talks about the changes that are happening. So
the hidden documentation.
That's the real problem, right? Like
it's the real problem. Yeah.
It's like all these little links. Like I really appreciate Ben putting in these longer discussion links and stuff like that, because that's the kind of stuff that was hard to find before. And now it's a little bit easier. But like unless you're like super plugged into up to the minute Meteor development, like it's kind of hard to find that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, another interesting thing is just Ben's kind of like candidness of saying like this code is really poorly written. I'm going to fix this. Like he is the only one. He's the only one writing Meteor, working on the Meteor platform. But there's no one else I would rather want working on the Meteor.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'll take him over pretty much any developer.
I know, right? Like, I mean, I loved Avital. I thought he was very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I remember when we first started using Meteor, and the community did too. Like, Greenspan and Glasser, like these guys that like, even Jeff, who wrote the beginnings of the framework. Everyone looked up to these guys as like, oh my god, they're like so smart. Then this guy from Facebook comes in and he just like looks at their code and he's like starts rewriting most of it, right?
Yeah.
Part of the Meteor platform is still the way it was, you know. All the stuff that we complain about is because of the legacy. I really feel like Ben is making strides into these, you know, he's touching the things that no one else wanted to touch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, a good anecdote for that is, like, I worked on a project right after Avatal left MDG. We were on a project together, and we both had the same objective, which was to speed up the overall loading time on mobile for this application. And like, it was a tough task. It was up to, I think, 4 seconds to load, like, initial, like, open the app, and then data was there and it was ready to use. It was like 4 seconds a time. And so, like, he was picking through and finding little 100 millisecond tweaks here and there, which is good. But I knew an easy win. And, like, you know, he was just trying to figure out all these little wins. And, like, I went through and just did a this.unblock global in the application and cut the time in half, you know? And, like, I think sometimes that can be an engineering problem as well. Like, you have to be able to take a step back and say, actually, where's our biggest win going to be? And, like, you know, with Meteor 141 and tar, like, that feels like a pretty big win to order of magnitude of speed gain there. So,
yeah.
That's
cool.
Good.
All right, last topic of the day is funny. React binding patterns, 5 approaches for handling this. And this is in quotes, because, you know, this. I went on the Meteor interviews once, and I talked about how I hate this in JavaScript. Because even the most advanced engineers think they know the context of it, when half the time you're still wrong, you know? So anyway, you know, in React, when you're using classes, there's several methods to actually bind the context of the React component to this, you know. And Corey House, who's been just balling lately with these articles, like he did one about, you know, stateless functional components that we covered, and I think he has a bunch of them. But I think he works at Pluralsight, and he just like wanted to spill the air or spill the beans or whatever on like the different patterns, because I know a lot of people are very opinionated about how they bind or use this, you know. So I'll go through them. Number one is, if you're old, he just said you could use the old school react.create class, and that used to auto bind this. So when people started using ES6 React, people were up in arms like, oh my god, I can't do anything, it's all broken. But it's because they just didn't auto bind this, which I'm actually in favor for. You should never auto bind anything. It's like Blaze auto binding this to be the data context. Like, who the hell knew that, right? So I'm not a fan of this, but you can, but you could, you know, you could use create class and it'll still work for you. If you can bind in the render function, which if you use Airbnb's React style guide, they will ban that because obviously they're a huge application. So they don't want to bind in the render function because that'll create a new instance of the function every time render is called. But Corey says that if your app is small, that's just a premature optimization, you know. But, you know.
Hey, I don't know. I'm not a fan of this, and I'll tell you why. Like, binding in the render, I think, you know, looking at ES7 and getting decorators, like, I have a feeling we'll get auto binding back, and I'm fine with auto binding as long as you know you're doing it and it's like explicitly done at the top of the file or whatever. And I think that binding in the render is going to be an additional problem at that point, right? Because you're going to have to hunt through your HTML code to find those like bind calls and replace them. And I just think it's not super obvious. So
yeah, I don't think so either. That's why you guys, you know, people who use React, you should lean on the style guide and ESLint, because then you'll never even get into the habit in the first place, you know. I have a coworker that is super into binding in the render function and had several arguments until I kept saying that, oh, it'll actually cause a lot of problems. No one believed me. Then, lo and behold, I found the ESLint React style guide, where it says exactly what I just said. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, so do you believe me now? Everyone freaking believed me then. So, okay, fine, whatever. Trust your style guide. Trust ESLint. Airbnb does a great job of keeping you honest. So,
yes.
Arrow functions in render. That's another thing.
It's basically the same thing as the first one or the last one.
Wait, which one?
If you do the arrow function, like
arrow function, same thing, right?
Terrible. Don't do it.
Don't do this one either. And ESLint, Airbnb, React won't let you do this one either.
Oh, really? So, interesting. I honestly, I never even thought to use a fat arrow. So.
Yeah, like you can use function, the word function. That's because they don't want you giving the context from the component into your function. So right. Anyway, I don't recommend this, but Corey says it doesn't really matter. That's because he's trying to be neutral. I'm more polar than that. Number 4, binding the constructor. This is the recommended approach. I'm into this one. This is what I do all the time. Sure, I may have 20 methods bound to the constructor, but first, you shouldn't have 20 methods bound to a constructor. You should make smaller components, okay? And 2, this is like the most clear place to do it because it's called the constructor. It's where everything starts, so you can understand and read from top to bottom where things are going to go, what the methods are exactly, stuff like that. So I'm into this. This is what everyone else recommends.
Yeah, and so for me, I do code reviews, and if I see any other style but this, I will ding you on it because number 1, you're right, performance concerns, and then number 2, future code concerns. The people coming in behind you should be able to open the file, make a relatively quick glance, and understand the events that are being handled essentially, right? You write these functions, and you need to have the context bound properly because you're handling some kind of event that happened in React, and you want to run a function as a result. So there's a lot of pluses to this, and I fully get behind this one. So
yeah, and the last one is you use arrow functions in the class property. This is actually pretty interesting. Might be the future of how we do these things, but there's a class property feature that's being proposed. I believe in ES 2016 or 2017. Which allows you to have static properties and class fields outside the constructor. So just just on the class, and then you use Babel to transform those methods into the constructor, I believe. It's just because people don't like writing stuff, so they don't want to do that. It'll also replace component will mount. You won't need to do the will mount calls. But anyway, that's besides the point. This is also interesting, just because arrow functions are great because you do want to bind context in, but yet I never really had the need to. I've worked on complex UI. I've never really needed to rely on arrow functions that much. I don't know. So pick your poison.
I don't know if they're handy. Coming from a background and using CoffeeScript, the arrow function was super handy. That's why, when I see it, I call it the fat arrow because in CoffeeScript you had fat arrow and skinny arrow, and fat arrow rebound your context properly, and skinny arrow just kept the context what it was. So
yeah,
I miss the skinny arrow.
Yeah, using arrow functions in your class is pretty much, it's the easiest way to go from create class to this because you can just replace the arrow. You're not going to have performance concerns like the binding in the render or arrow functions in render, and you're not going to have to write .bind on everything. So you probably, for those who want to save lines of code, 4 letters or whatever, that'll be good for you too. I personally will go with the 5th one just because that's going to be the same thing as number 4.
Yeah.
But, just syntactical sugar, it's probably the best one. But if you're a team that's kind of wary about adopting new features, I would hold off a little bit, But if you're gung-ho, then go for it.
Yeah. So I think like my concern here would be like if this gets shot down,
Exactly.
that's going to be a little weird, right? But
Yeah,
it's a stage 2 proposal, which I don't even know what that means.
Stage 2, that means that there's a draft out and the author is very sure about it. They're sure, but the committee's not, you know? So, but, you know, a lot of us are using stage 2 properties today, like, you know, object spread, which is stage 2.
I didn't realize that.
You know, like decorators are stage 2 as well. People use decorators. So, but, you know, but you got to look at the authors, right? So, like, object spread author is Sebastian Markovich from React. So, a lot of people look up to him, so I'm sure that'll go through. And then decorators are from Yehuda Katz, who is from Ember. So that's going to go through for sure. These two, like, people who people look up to. I don't know who did this class property feature. I think it's who's this guy? I don't even know.
Daniel Tishinder. Hope I said that right.
Yeah. So if we don't know who he is, probably not going to go through. I'm just kidding.
No, come on now.
It'll totally. This is a good change. I think it will go through. It's just, you know, if you like living on the wild side, then go for it. If you don't, then don't do it. So,
yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. So I guess that's the end of the show.
That's the end of the show.
Yeah, that's it.
Bunch of good stuff going on here.
Yeah, it's good to catch up again this week. I'm excited. And I will say, like, I am committed to getting the new version of Creator launched. Like, I'm this close. And if you're listening, like, it's super, super close. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see. It's not an actual measurement, but like, so at this point we've got the OAuth stuff seems broken, and I've got to download either the dev version of MUP or roll back to a slightly older version of MUP, because the one I'm using now, the log command doesn't work. So I can't see the Docker logs for the new Creator, which sucks. I don't know exactly what's wrong with the OAuth. I think it's throwing 500 error, so I got to figure that out.
Oh, man.
But once that's done, like, you know, we've got podcast integration in the sidebar. We've got, like, it links to the conference up in the top bar. The other thing I want to do is try to set up a public Slack room, so anyone that's a Creator fan can jump in, and we can have a Slack channel where we can talk. It'll be different than, say, like, Space Dojo Slack room, which you can get into through Patreon. But, you know, I want to have somewhere where people can, like, it doesn't cost you anything. If you're a fan of Creator, you can just go and talk and have those conversations you want to have. We don't, like, we never really got, like, a Meteor Slack chat room. Like, there's one for Apollo, which is pretty good, but there was never one for Meteor. So I feel like I want to bring the community together in that way, and hopefully it's a positive thing. So
I will say this, like, Meteor forums. So there was a time where Creator was like the place to go for news, like, because back then it was like Meteor news.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole Meteor forums came out, and it was a bunch of drama, so everyone went to the Meteor forums.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Meteor forums is where dreams go to die. Like, there's just, like, nothing productive going on there. And people who ask for help, they don't even get responses like they used to.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, that's not the place to ask for help either. Like, Stack Overflow.
That's true. But, you know, that place is dying. And I think with the Creator rebirth, it's going to, like, bring back the traffic, you know, all the questions and everything, and articles are going to come back to Creator. So I'm really looking forward to it. So,
well, the thing that I think probably hurt the most with Creator is the fact that you have to have positive karma in order to post now. And so, like, and I don't really talk about it. I'll just say this, like, if you're a spammer and you listen to this podcast, we've set the bar pretty high. And so I'll say, like, you have to have at least 5 positive karma, which means you have to get 5 upvotes on comments. And, like, I feel like there was a spammer the other day that asked me, like, how to get karma on Twitter, and I went and looked at his Twitter feed, and I didn't answer his question because, like, it looked pretty spammy. But, like, you know, that kind of hurts because you can't just come in and start, you can leave a comment, but you can't post a link. So, and that's we just can't have nice things because spammers.
That's why we can't have nice things, man.
Yep. Blame the spammers. All right, Avi. Well, thanks, man.
All right, no worries. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, tune in next week, and we'll have more dev news.
This video has been a Space Dojo production. You can click the Learn More button to find out more about us at spacedojo.com. Or you can click the subscribe button to get notified about new videos we put out each week. Thanks for watching.